Hey everybody, it's Bust with Battles with Bust number 472, and today we're doing Battle in a Ruthless Rumble. So if you're wanting to skip ahead to the gameplay, a couple of things. We're only going to be playing a maximum of 3 matches today. I have to take off kind of early. I have a family event. I got to go make some deviled eggs, and so I'm not going to run the full thing. You never know with gauntlets anyways. If you have to play like 18 games at 10 minutes a game, you're out here for 3 hours, I definitely can't swing that. So we're going to get in a minimum of 2, because that's what it takes to 0-2 these things, a maximum of 3, and we'll be calling it a day there. Then if you're wanting to skip on to the gameplay, we're going to be playing Vayne, Jarvan, Freylord, the Warden of the Tribes deck. We're going to be playing Jax Ornn, the almost Warden of the Tribes deck, and then we're going to be playing Nidalee, Bandle City, the bigger than the Warden of the Tribes deck. And so, as I always say, if you're wanting to scroll backwards through the channel, we've certainly covered off on Vayne, Jarvan, and we've covered off on Jax Ornn. Nidalee is going to be our weak point today. I'm kind of deciding how I feel about Nidalee in terms of bringing it to the Open that's going to be here in about a week. I like how the deck is performing. I don't like my inexperience with it, and so I do need to kind of come out and jam a lot of games with Nidalee if that's going to be a deck I'm looking to bring to the Open. But to come into the strategy, the idea with what we're doing today is, number one, the kind of biggest threat in the format is Janna. Whatever you do in your deck building decisions, you have to decide, am I going to play against Janna? And if so, which versions? And so the 2 big versions that you're going to encounter are going to be Janna Samira and Nilah Janna. And so that kind of gives your opponent a little bit of flexibility if they want to take the high-powered champion that is Samira, not double that up with the high-powered champion that is Janna. You can split them up and kind of hedge your bets and power level across your 2 decks, or you can just kind of put together this one big must-ban monstrosity, but you lose out on the option of playing 2 of your kind of key champions. And so my thought on the format is I don't really want to play against Janna Samira, but if I have to, I will. And so what this lineup gives us the flexibility to do is I suspect the majority of the lineups we see are going to be playing the kind of top 2 decks. So it's going to be one of those flavors of Janna along with your favorite Warden of the Tribes deck. And then you're going to be flexing out some kind of third, something like Heimerdinger, Jace, whatever the deck is that you like to play. And that's going to be the kind of most common lineups. And so in those kind of situations, I'm more than fine against playing Heimerdinger, Jace. I'm more than fine against playing against Warden of the Tribes. We've kind of metaed against that. And we'll just be banning out Janna Samira in those cases. But if we run into these lineups to where opponents are going to start trying to be really clever, they're going to come up with some really interesting and neato ways to try and beat Warden of the Tribes. And so if they're starting to play a bunch of bullshit like Teemo Yuumi elusives with Battle Furies, then that's not like a good matchup for any of our decks. We can still feel pretty comfortable banning that out and then having our options to just do battle against Samira. And so I like what our lineup brings us in terms of that flexibility. We're happy enough against the top deck. It's probably very coin flippy in the hands of very skilled opponents. It's going to be in their favor, but against less skilled opponents, it's going to be in our favor. The Warden of the Tribes matchups are fine across the board. And then that leaves us that flexibility. If we want to take the big guns out, we can, or if we want to play the ban strategy against what seems to be a more like Warden of the Tribes targeted lineup, then we have access to ban out that instead. And so to pull up our deck lists real quick, I have altered all of our deck lists since we did our last set of battles. Those deck lists that we've done in the Battles with Bust series ladder games were kind of tuned towards the general spaces. And so in one game you might be playing Samira Janna, the next game you're going to play Warden of the Tribes, next game you're going to play something else. It's just you need to be kind of much more generalist in what it's trying to do. Now that we have this space to where we feel much more comfortable just banning out Samira Janna, that opens up the ideas to play cards like Buried in Ice, which are much better against the Warden of the Tribes decks. Allows us to play cards like Screeching Dragon that gives us a little bit more interactivity, where these cards aren't particularly good playing against Janna. They're just actually liabilities given how expensive they are. And so we've made some changes that way. The other big thing is we've started to move a little bit away from Elixir of Iron. The big value you get out of Elixir of Iron is against the Janna decks. And so if Janna's going to come down, try and play the 3 damage Lightning Storm on a unit, you get Elixir of Iron your unit to safety, and that's a nice tempo play against a deck that really needs to pull out that survivability in the early game and really limit your width. But as we don't intend on playing against Janna that frequently, I feel like we can get our combat tricks more in tune with playing against the Freylord decks. And so in this particular deck, we've cut out the Elixir of Irons that we were playing. We have moved in the Form-Ups, which is a much more powerful card in a general kind of combat-heavy sense. Up next, we have the Nidalee Bandle City deck. We haven't got to do battles with Bust with this. I've really just picked up this deck over the past couple of days. This is the deck that we are actually going to struggle with quite a bit over the course of these games, but it's starting to kind of click. It's starting to kind of mesh in my brain. I don't feel like there's a deck like this anywhere else. And so it's kind of a tough one to just pick up and get going. The sequences don't make a lot of sense until you start to understand how the combinations work between the Valley of Imitation and the Chief Knack Attack and the Curious Changeling and then the doubling abilities you get out of the Big Game Tycoon. It can be a little bit awkward and it feels a little bit strange your first few games. I'm still picking it up, but I don't feel comfortable making a lot of edits to this. I don't know if we want to play Gnar. I feel like you can probably cut a pie toss. You can maybe cut a Rite of Negation. And so the edits I'm not feeling super comfortable with, but the power level of the deck is here, and it's most certainly just going to steal some wins. If you're not familiar with what this deck can do, you can say get Valley of the Imitation on board whenever this sees the follower played, it does the transform effect. If you have the Big Game Tycoon on board, when an ally transforms, you double its health and power. And so if we have the Valley of Imitation on board, we flip it with the Big Game Tycoon. It actually sees the Big Game Tycoon's ability twice, and so it doubles from a 5-6 to a 10-12, and then it doubles again from a 10-12 to a 20-24. But then the big thing with the Valley of Imitation is it keeps all of those buffs, and so then on your next turn, if you want to play, say, a Towering Paraphant, the Valley of Imitation swaps into the Paraphant. It gets that plus 12 whatever stats that we just mentioned before, but then it gets doubled again by the Big Game Tycoon, and so it ends up having like 50-60 overwhelm type power. A lot of these combos also work with the likes of the Curious Changelings, and so it takes a while to kind of figure these out. I'll try to make a little bit more mention of this deck than I typically would as we play the games, since it may not be ultra familiar with you with what's happening. Last but not least, we are playing Jax Ornn. Again, we've kind of tuned this up a little bit to where we're a little bit less interested in playing against Janna Samira, so we're starting to cut down on our Elixir of Irons, starting to pull in more of this interactivity like Entrancing Lure and Sky Splitter. I was never like really amped, really jazzed to be in these spots to where we're like, okay, let's drop the Entrancing Lure onto our Jax and then just try and slam it into one of Janna's units. It's just, you would get completely annihilated by their burn spells and removal suites in that sense. But again, as we're looking to move further away from playing against Janna, more in tune to playing the buried or the Warden of the Tribe style deck, you know that your Jax is just much safer in those combats that he enters. So I feel better adding in things like Entrancing Lure. It gives us some much needed interactivity. I've again kind of moved away from that Elixir of Iron package, including the Sky Splitters into the removal suite here. And then we have included one copy of Buried in Ice. And so we do have that singular Buried in Ice in both of our Freylord decks. And so that's it. That's the decks we're doing battle with today. But, excuse me, you know what we got to do before the battles begin. We got to come out here and turn something premium, pay up on that pay-to-win price. And it's easy. You can tell we haven't played much Nidalee out here. You got Bristlehog, you got All-Train Teruper, you got Aurora Halonatus, you got Avenging Vastaya. You're the first premium we've come across, right? But across the board, these units are not particularly premium. Must feel kind of bad for them, you know? But I think we can come out here. We're going to just boost up the Bristlehog. I got to get more coins, don't I? But this will be our premium guy for the day. All right, off we go. Lost my Battle Furies. Sorry to not play that anymore. Rico Rex probably super upset with us. Get the Nidalee. Get the Jax Ornn in here. Let's jump on into battle. So while that queue loads up, I mean, I've got my Deviled Eggs book out here. Props to this lady, whoever this was, Kathy Casey, putting these Deviled Eggs books together. Got to really appreciate the things that she's doing for us out there. But let's come in here and check this out real quick. I'm fine enough to ban out the Warden of the Tribes deck, the Gnar Jarvan. We aren't like super strong against it with our Vayne deck, but these other ones I'm fine to play against. Vayne, Gwen, and both. This is the down here to the right, the Samira Annie deck is the Wildfire deck. And so, while we're waiting on that, I want to play Nidalee first since I'm terrible with this deck and we need more chances. But I'm going to be making goat cheese and peppadew deviled eggs. Look at that. Check that pick right there. That looks pretty good, right? I don't know, man, but that's the one I decided on. I didn't know what peppadew was. Turns out that's some kind of pepper. And then it's got goat cheese in it. You slap an almond on top. Yeah, the family's gonna be fucking hyped tonight, and so that's what we got to do. That's why we got to cut the video a little bit short, you know. And so, reasonable enough start up against Samira Annie. We want as much early game stuff as we can muster against this deck, and so being able to pie toss their first play or drop a Bristle Hog on the first turn feels pretty good. We have that interactivity with the All-Terrain Trooper on the second turn, so even if we say pie toss a Legion Saboteur, we can still maybe All-Terrain Trooper on turn 2, or if he's going to start with Annie, then we still have the kind of free hook into her, so... Very nice. I'm not going to prevent this damage. We'll take the initial 2. Got to feel a little bit safer with some of our options in this matchup, right? We have the Rite of Negation in here. We have the 3 Avenging Vestias. And so we have a handful of ways that we can interact with the wildfires from the opposing decks. But the thing to note with the wildfire is that it... get this attack in. He's never going to block with the duo, but we might as well give him the bad block if he wants it. You can counterspell the wildfire. It still grows in stature. I've never noticed if it shuffles back into the deck, though. I don't think it shuffles back, but I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again, you know. Alright, just prevent all this damage. Make him put in the work if he wants to be hitting the nugget today. Sure. Just another target for the pastries. Alright, so things are moving reasonably. So it should be pretty tough for him to get to add things to the board, and now this quicksand is going to be kind of nice. He should be, you know, pretty close to being out of elusives at this point. We got the 2 big ones, right? We got the Green Glade duos out of the way, but with this quicksand, it keeps him from drawing the spell, which is huge in this space. So more than happy to go ahead and drop that down. Look at that aggro Bristle Hog today. He's feeling good. He's feeling premium. Oh my god, that's a lot of text. Small omnivorous mammals covered in bristle-like spikes, which may be released at high velocities when disturbed. Sounds like a porcupine, yo. I think I nailed what's happening with the Bristle Hog. It's a porcupine, but it's got a smiley face on it. Gotcha.
I have my orders.
All right, let's just keep taking these shutdowns. Like, there's a little concern with pastrying the Legion Saboteur. He can now follow up with the Green Glade duo, but I feel like we've really done our work as far as this game is concerned, and we should be in pretty good shape to be finishing this off. I don't think we really want to lose any of our units here. Let's go ahead and spin the Prowl. It's going to get to draw a spell off of this. Not the biggest deal in the world. Again, you don't have to worry about combat tricks here. You don't have to worry about burn spells. We just know our units are safe since they only play wildfires in the card draw spell. There it is, number 1. The Burnination coming at us. All right, Valley of Imitation. Oh, it's going to be when you play a follower. I was going to say we have the the shadows in the brush on board. And this is one of those interactions, right, to where... Oh, we just had lethal anyways. To where when you play Hallonatus face up with the Valley of Imitation on board, it transforms into the Hallonatus and then puts an extra one on board for you. And so, interesting little angle that card brings forth for us. All right, now these matchups should be a little bit tougher. I think Vayne Jarvan feels pretty fine against the Gwen deck. The Gwen deck has like a lot of these weird high-powered draws that we can't really do anything about if we don't draw any interactivity. But overall, I think it's pretty fine. With here, I don't want any of this stuff. We need to find our cheap unit boosters. Ideally, find a combat trick as well. Found the combat trick piece, but the rest of this. Not what we're looking for. We need those Petricide Broadwings to get out here and block. Not the start you're usually looking for against Annie. Alright, anything. That's not it. Well, I guess anything wasn't specific enough, We were guaranteed to draw anything here. We needed a card we could play, is what we were shooting for. Alright. Well, we should never win this game. This game should literally be unwinnable from this point forward. But we'll keep at it, Okay, GG. Nothing that you can do about that. Like, the stagehand draw would have been tough enough to beat anyways, but not having a play on turn 1 or turn 2 and then getting tempoed by the stagehand on turn 3, just literally never winning that game. But it's one of those spots. It doesn't mean that the Annie Samira deck's any good. I've played the deck a bit. I think it's just garbage. But the question I start to ask in those spots are like, what decks actually don't beat you in that spot? And there's some. I mean, there's some opportunities for slowness to be taken advantage of there. But at the end of the day, that was just going to be too slow. Now up against Vayne Gwen, reasonable enough curve start. I'd like to be able to come down and block just as much stuff as we can in the early game, so that when it comes to Gwen beating us down, it's not as big of a deal. So this deck does bring out some high-powered shenanigans, though. Tumbling and cataclysming their Gwens and stuff like we do in our deck can be kind of tough to deal with. But I'm going to try and build up to this, the Ranger Knight Defector. It should be fairly tough for the opponent to deal with, and so we can curve in our blocking Badger Bear here, and then next turn try and get the equipped Ranger Knight powering through the defenses. All right, my dude. What you got for us? All right, block. That's how you say it, right? You say it with authority. All right, block. It's tempting to just leave the Boisterous Host up, but we're going to have like such high-powered units on this follow-up turn with the Defector. Love seeing the combat trick happen here, that he's just going to start getting blasted by this thing. And so it does give him a little opportunity to be like, okay, here's a Gwen. Gwen's going to be very threatening on the following turn, but if he's not getting to open attack on us on that following turn, we get the chance to just drop some of these smaller units on board. It should be pretty tough for him to attack through. That felt good. Oh, just stone nothing. Wow. Okay, I'll take it. That's what you get, huh? as we had to play one game where everything just went absolutely wrong. Opponents kind of suffering from the same thing, and so I'm curious what the unit suite's going to be looking like there, in terms of, he probably has to have like Eternal Dancers and Hate Spikes and Combat Tricks in hand, right? If he had any unit, like literally any unit he could play, he would have played it on the previous turn. And so, like, that's what would make sense to me as being incoming. Let's go ahead and take this damage. We can heal a bit from the Blacksmith. Kind of like the Fix'em 5000. The Pan of Pain, I guess with our innovative Blacksmith having +2/+2, the Pan of Pain isn't as exciting since it survives Hate Spikes already. Alright, more combats.
Monsters still lurk in Demasia's every shadow.
Guess we can Sarion. Gives us the potential for a touch of health on the following turn. The GGs are coming in. Alright. Rip it, roll it, put it in your pipe and smoke it. GG. Yeah, we keep getting the thunderstorm warnings. We got them earlier, and I decided this is a good time to go to the grocery store. The old folks don't want to be out there in the rain, so I did it. And then, like, we don't usually get a lot of hail out here, but it started hailing, and I was like, "Fuck, this is why you weren't supposed to travel. This is it, huh?" But all right, jumping into the battles here, we're gonna ban out this Teemo Yuumi. This is another lineup that looks very tuned towards beating other Warden of the Tribes decks, and so I worry a little bit about what's happening from his Gnar Jarvan. And then to the right, he does have the Renekton Sejuani, which I'm looking into playing. I'm like, if I'm not feeling really comfortable with our Nidalee deck by the time the open runs around, I'm gonna look to playing. I like the idea more so of playing Gnar Nidalee along with the Shurima unit that Daybreaks to pass out vulnerables. And then have that be your last remaining Warden of the Tribes deck. And so that's kind of like in my brain nugget as something to do, but it's not what we're going to ban here. We're going to ban out the Fizz Yuumi deck. All right, let's kick it off with Nidalee. The last deck you might see us bring to the open is I do still like Samira Gnar, the Noxen version with the Noxen version with the decisive maneuvers and the like. We made a video with it a few days ago. But yeah, there's some interesting stuff coming out of Shurima, right? You can play the one-cost cultist that does the predicts. It's always pretty good. You can look to include that elite unit out of this new set that Daybreaks to put vulnerables on people. And then Nidalee being a cat. Like, you have pretty good options across the board that you can play within the deck. And so it should probably get a little bit more respect than it's currently given. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the Shadow in the Brush Nidalee. I don't think he's going to be like, oh boy, it's all-terrain trooper. I better slap my unit in here. But I think we still feel fairly safe dropping her on the board. There shouldn't be a ton of removals coming out of this opposing deck. Let's go ahead and swing. I don't want to flip Nidalee here. I do want to get the Chief Knack attack on board and just give her the big mountain of stats that can come along with that. And we are looking... This is a hand that should be looking towards a Nidalee flip. All right, it's got the Aurora Haranalis. The Aurora, however you pronounce this guy, to get 3 units on the board at the same time. And Renekton. Okay. Certainly happy just to bank through this turn. Otherwise, we can flip into Renekton. Still have the Quicksand mana behind. Opponent has the mana up for a combat trick here. That's pretty reasonable, but I think at this point, Peace is a very top-notch player. You should be able to read in that the Renekton is not too safe at this point. Although I guess it could be just an Aurora Halanatus coming out of this kind of spot. Anyways, so let's take the flip here and pick up the ambush while we can. And then I'm just going to let these combats happen. I want to try and get this Nidalee flip happening next turn. We'll have the 7 mana to do it. So I want to start trying to push for it. I guess the real question is, does he ever just not block here? Which I think I'm fine with. But let's go ahead and send it in. It should be a touch obvious that we have some stronger plays coming through. Forgot that we were one short on the Nidalee, that she didn't see the knack attack flip. It's okay. We'll get her flipped for this next turn. Still get a pretty massive board here, even with even with messing up how the gameplay's going. All right, you got to watch yourselves with these guys. They almost always pick the destroy a landmark. Well, I'm not like 100% certain that that's what he would be bringing in here, given that the Nidalee is threatening to flip on this next turn. But it's a very common one to bring in. Gonna drop a Vastaya. It's gonna give us the mana to both potentially counter a spell. There shouldn't be too many spells we can actually counter with the Vastaya, but if we get out of this turn safely and then he's going to try and blow up the landmark next turn, then we have some options there in terms of protecting from that potential landmark thing in hand. This is fine. I don't care about this. We do need to be a little bit more proactive, though. Like, we don't have one of these giant draws that gets the big overwhelms running across, but there's still a little bit of cause for concern here. So we did take away the overwhelm on our Nidalee. Probably not getting that Nexus Strike, but she does get to keep the larger cat form for a longer period of time here. So yeah, I mean, the Warden of the Tribes is who will be coming down next turn. Not really anything we can do about that. We can try and clear out some board here. Don't have the tools to, you know, be scary about it. I think we are going to need to start trying to pie toss some of these things down. But I don't have giant expectations for the turn. But, I mean, if we can limit him to a couple of units, we can stop dying from overwhelm, given that we have the quicksands and stuff. Alright, here they come. Squad coming through. Should be a decent, quicksandable turn. Maybe get a cleanup after the fact with the pastry. It's just, we got to clear out as much of this as we can. If he drops the Warden next turn, we don't have a Warden of our own to try and fight through it with. I guess the real question is, you know, how aggressive are we going to be on this Saurion with our quicksands? Like, I have in my head that I'm just kind of like, okay, well, we can do a -1/-1 on our quicksands, and then still just have the dude on board. But at the end of the day, I don't think we care. like to lose the Bristle Hog. I lost track of our Valley of Imitations here. I really hate how this is set up, not knowing which one is actually which one. I guess we're supposed to pay a little bit more attention or something, but alright, let's it's like I just don't know how, if we could still win this game without Nidalee. We could just get wider than him. And so if he's going to have a +1/+3 on the Saurion, it's still pretty okay. Beautiful. Right, because the way I need to kind of envision this now is as we roll into the next turn, we can just get a completely full board again. Right, and so if he plays the Warden of the Tribes next turn, we can Quicksand, throw away 2 units, and then immediately refill. Renekton does get to flip though. Fun times for him.
Come no closer.
Alright, friends. Let's get everyone into combat. Oh man, I forgot to fuck that up a little bit. I kind of forgot that our Valley of Imitation was going to get lost there. This is okay. We're still in good shape. I'm telling you though, I gotta get more reps with this deck. The angles with it are just so not straightforward to me. It should be a pretty good indicator to like the actual power level of this deck as we just sit here and fuck around and just mess everything up. I'm sure if someone like Ichiran Raymond was watching, he would tell us what a horrible collection of mistakes we've made. And then if someone like even Plink at Riot Plink plays quite a bit of Nidalee out there as well. I just sit here, watch these games and just get mad. But I think we definitely do want to be attacking with Nidalee here. She's got a lot of opportunity in the sense that, you know, you don't really want to mess with her. You want to be casting your spells on all these other cards. But, like as it stands right now, we're starting to present lethals, and then if we play this ambush on her, she's going to deal 3 points of damage and generate a spear. So there's a lot of interesting combat follow-up that we could potentially get through that. Right, if for whatever reason we don't get a lethal here, getting the javelin and clearing out some of these big boys is another kind of path to victory. So we'll see. I don't know if he's going to be playing Quicksands, going to be playing Harsh Winds. No guarantees that we'll get a kill here. But we're presenting the lethal now. We have a Perilous Pastry in hand with the Vistaya on board. So we got a little bit of follow-up. I guess ultimately the thing the opponent has to worry about at this point is if our ambush unit is the elephant, right, the 6/5, and if we flip the elephant, then we have the 6 damage from it with the 1 damage thing out of hand, so we can get the lose out on the potential there. Flash freeze is kind of brutal, so we can flip our Vistaya. That's going to get us to 3. We're only going to be dealing 5 damage this turn, though, 1 short of the lethal with the pastry. Should just be dead at this point. I wonder if we should have just opened this turn and not messed with the changelings. Like I had in my head the worry in making the open attack. Like, maybe we should have just gone for the open when he only had 2 units, but it's like we did get 2 more units on board to face down his 1 unit, and so that's tough. Hey, GG though. I assure you, a seasoned Nidalee veteran watched that game just went, oh no. Oh no, bust. That was brutal. But it's interesting. One of the things that I was kind of thinking about as life happened today, I in the mornings I like to go outside and walk around, and I listen to a variety of podcasts. It's a bit of a bummer in the lands of Runeterra in the sense that, like I try to come out and listen to the Runeterra podcasts, and it's like the Mastering Runeterra folks haven't done anything since August, and then the what are their names? The Baj Attack thing, whatever his podcast is called. It's usually just whenever a set is released, and so I have to find other podcasty stuff to listen to in the mornings. And I do like Two Bears, One Cave. It's Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura. You might be familiar with their comedic efforts, but on their most recent one, they had a I don't know. I don't think psychologist is the right word, but they had some kind of psychologist on the show, and he's talking quite a bit about like doing new things and experiencing new things and having the new things that you do impact the other parts of your life, and always doing new things and trying new experiences affecting your psyche and improving your brain performance and everything. And so I do feel like it's been fairly important that we come out and do start playing some of these new decks and stuff. So while we may not be ultimately successful with Nidalee, we do have to we do have to expand our horizons on occasion to not just play these style of decks all the time. The Bruiser Freylord beat 'em ups with the Demacia rallies, you know. All right. Well, we do have access to the big boy. The downside to dropping the Paraphant is if he's got the free hooks into our Valley of Imitation now, and I don't really want to lose it. We do have access to a Pytos to shrink his guy, but it's not quite as effective as I want it to be. I'm leaning toward just playing a Vastaya so that we get the bonus stats across all of our units, but then still have the interactivity. The other option is just to not play anything so we can't interact with our landmark, but like we don't have the good cards in our hand anyways, right? The only combo we really had access to is we could have given the landmark +1/+1 off the Bristlehog, but we don't have any of the big combos here today. So I don't think this is going to be super successful. You know, it's just an easy spot to have another combat trick, which he does. But we are just going to get reamed if we didn't put anything on the board. Now we have a okay-ish attack. Not great, just okay-ish. So I'm fine to trade the Vastaya into the Blacksmith, and we have the flip on the Paraphant. I wouldn't be surprised if you just took all the damage here. Yeah, it's not a particularly scary board. We'll shrink the bird so it can't just threaten our ambushes, and then we'll call it a day. Need to pick up one of our big cards. Need a Tycoon, need a Curious Changeling so we can get the copies off the shadows in the brush. Pytos is not what we were looking for. How did this guy just grow so big? Oh, he had his Pot of Pain. Gotcha.
The unsuspecting are the easiest quarry.
Still looking painful. Looking painful. Curious how big of an attack he brings. in the sense that, again, like he wants to get a really wide board. He's not doing that right now, and so at least if he attacks. Now if the Warden comes in, we're just dead, but our hand did literally nothing. I don't feel like there was too much option. I mean, we could have played it a little bit differently to be a little bit more careful with the our Valley of Imitation, but again, we didn't have the combos for it. That was a spot where you really needed a Chief Knack Attack or a Big Game Hunter or something to try and boost everything with. But again, I feel like fine just kind of dicking around with the Nidalee deck at the moment. I'm gonna have to give it like a really hard push if it's something that we're wanting to bring to the open. And so it's probably what we'll feature in the next Battles with Bust video. I'll take another day or two of grinding with it and then get a good feel for it. But I think the idea of our strategy, I like the way our lineup sits right now, in the sense that we're just not playing 3 Warden of the Tribes deck, right? There's a lot of similarity to like between Jack's Ornn and between that and the Warden of the Tribes decks, but you're not bringing this lineup to where you're playing 3 copies of a Warden of the Tribes deck, and whenever you face a lineup like that one that's kind of geared towards beating them, it's kind of a pain point. But I still like the space that these Wardens decks sit in. Given exactly like as we ran into a lineup like that, we didn't feel bad running into that one, and we got to ban out the actual problematic matchup, right? And so even if that was a lineup that had the Fizz deck, the Warden of the Tribes deck, and Samira Janna, you still feel fine if they leave Samira Janna up. Like I know you can go and look at the stats websites and see that these Warden of the Tribes decks are supposed to be favored against Samira Janna, and that's going to be the case as you like climb through Diamond or whatnot. But when you get against like the ultra high caliber players towards the end of an open, those players are not having that same percentage against the Warden of the Tribes deck. They're going to be much more skilled at the Janna matchups. And it's just like so brutal to me having to play against Janna. It's like you get into so many spots to where like you've taken Janna down to 1 card and you have such a board presence and you feel like you're really about to win the game. And then like out of nowhere, over the course of 2 turns, they just have a completely full board. They've killed 2 of your units. They've done 8 damage to you and they have 7 cards in hand. Like it is insane. the just the amount of nonsense and bullshit that deck can top deck into. And so it's not one that I'm like super excited to play, but I'm fine to coin flip against it to get one of those decks like Teemo Fizz out of or Fizz Yuumi out of the opposing lineup. Ooh. Big thunderstorm came in today. I'm in no way complaining about being one of the fortunate folks that gets to own a home, but it's so different, like the feeling of growing up and then making it all the way through my mid-30s to the points to where I didn't own a home and then getting into my mid-30s and owning a home. Like whenever a thunderstorm rolls through, like it used to be neat, right? You used to be like, oh man, I want to go sit out on the porch, or I want to sit in the garage with the door open and watch the thunderstorm. It's going to be so neat. It was kind of an enjoyable experience. But now the thunderstorm rolls through and it's like, fuck. It's like, I got to check the basement and see if there's water. I got to check the garage and see if there's water. I got to go look at the trees and see if they've dropped any giant fucking limbs on the house. It's just like such a different experience between a matter of a few years ago and where I'm at now. The way that the thunderstorm rolls through, just like fuck. It's like you can just see like the monetary value flooding right out of your bank account. It's like in comes the rains, out comes the monies. It's just brutal. You hate it so much. It's one of the treats. We had a dry basement today, though. That was pretty cool. It's like you. That's why I don't usually look at my phone during these things, but I kind of expecting a message from the wife, and I was getting more of those thunderstorm notifications on my phone. Uh, the reason I actually have that on there, I have it set up to call me whenever one of those National Weather Service alerts goes out, because we had a fucking tornado go down our street and nobody knew. It happened so fast that the tornado sirens did not go off in time to warn people that the tornado was coming. And the only way that you would have known that, hey, there's a tornado like 5-10 minutes away from your fucking house is is if you were signed up to like the digital alerts. And so it was like I got the alert from Google. I didn't wake up because I don't like that little noise doesn't wake me up while I'm asleep. But um, I got signed up for that stuff now, so it calls me when those national alerts hit. Don't have to ideally worry about it as much. Tornadoes still scare the shit out of me, and so preferably not have to deal with that. So, jumping into game 3, like, I've never felt particularly bad playing these Volibear Galio style of matchups. Like, it's a fairly kind of like coin tossy endeavor as you go against them with our kind of mid-rangey style decks in the terms of just like who draws the most unit boosting in the mid game. And so it feels like our deck doesn't even matter as much as their deck matters in them drawing Balin. And so it's like if they don't draw Balin, you just win the game. And if they do draw Balin, you're in for a real uphill climb. But I don't feel like those matchups are particularly bad. I'll leave Nidalee up. The idea with Nidalee is she's going to be good against the decks that we're playing, and maybe SS Nova here is a much more in-tuned Nidalee player than we are. So we'll just stick to this kind of plan and take the Janna out of the mix. Jump in with Nidalee. I'll go ahead and let you know I've played this mirror match a total of 0 times, and I'm just gonna stick to like the high-powered stuff, right? I feel like this matchup is one that's probably pretty challenging to lose in the early to mid game, right? You're not going to be developing any of these boards that has just like this big scary collection of unit width. Like I guess you could like maybe pop off with a Nidalee in the early game or something, but I'm not going to come in and worry about that. I'm going to go for the big stuff here. So we have the Valley of Imitation and the Big Game Tycoon. We have the tools to get the big shenanigans happening, and then we're going to go from there. And so I'm not going to put Nidalee on board. I don't want her to just die to a all-terrain trooper, and then we're going to start in with our Valley. Like, that's what this matchup has to be all about, right? The big game Tycoons, Valley of Imitations, and just making these million units. I don't know. That's what would make sense to me, though. That's what would make sense to me. Alright, he's got a knack attack. We got a knack attack. He did have the all-terrain trooper. It's like, I'm curious if we should just let our guy go. Like, save the quicksand for a big overwhelm turn. I think we can safely block. Like, the damage is going to be gone here. If he has a prowl, then we do have the quicksand to save our unit. But I don't think we need to get too crazy in this combat. The second Valley now. I kind of want to just play it next turn. But it's like if we start to drop... Let's just add Nidalee. It's like if we start to drop like the Aurora Halanatus, like it doesn't quite do enough for me, I don't think. And so let's just get Nidalee on board. We can get her going on like turn 7, right? If we don't mess up all of our units on board here, we can get that flipped Nidalee off the Big Game Tycoon and just try and end it. So we'll see. He needs to add a unit to the board here to be scary. Right, this isn't lethal. So I think we're fairly safe, right? Changelings is a little scarier, but again, like, I do keep forgetting that this Halanatus isn't entirely working how I want. But like, if we're real with this turn, we can add the Halanatus, right? We can, as long as we don't die, right? We have 2 blocks, maybe a 3rd block. As long as we just don't die here, we can use Nidalee in the Valley. We can get 2 Valleys on board with the Big Game Tycoon next turn, and that should hopefully be enough to end this nonsense. So let's start with these safe blocks, then block with the units we don't care about. Where does that get us? Now, he does have a ton of impact right here in the middle, right? We can stop 6 points of damage with a quicksand. So now this should only be 12 if we... Is that right? Hang on. 6, 10, and then 2 more from this all-terrain trooper being 12. And then it's going to be an extra -2 from the quicksands. Alright. Get ready for this. Get the highlight reel primed and ready. You're about to see some big fucking numbers, okay? You're about to see some big fucking numbers. Alright. Alright, Big Game Tycoon. Show them what the world's all about. We got in here. Let's take a Vistaya, I guess. Probably should have looked at those a little closer, but... Alright, let's get them big numbers on board, boys. That's big. It's fairly big, right? I hope it's big enough. You got your Tycoon? See, this is all I'm saying. Like, I don't know how this mirror match is supposed to go, but this strikes me as the way that was going to be good, in the sense that you should just be dead. He doesn't have quicksand mana. You know, if we just get to come out and do the big obnoxious thing and the opponent doesn't, then we should win the game. And that's what seems to have happened. You got that 184 attack Nidalee just slamming in. Oof, that's good. I like looking at a big number on the screen, so go us. Now, these remaining matches worry me a little bit. The Jax-Ornn matchup into both of these decks is not spectacular. So, very... as much fun as it was to get the victory there, is a decent chance on the comeback. He's just going to 2-0 our Jax-Ornn deck. We'll see. We'll see how that shakes out. And so, we need to have a little bit more early game here. We'll hang on to the Blacksmith just to ensure that we have something, but I'd like some 1s and some 2s if we can find them. Nice Jax to turn up. See if the game breaks. Trying to get Jax on board. He's just hanging out right in the middle of the screen. There we go. Prowl coming in to zing us. Sure. So do we want a Blacksmith? The thing that I'm kind of looking towards is next turn, if we want to play an Entrancing Lure, you got to have 2 mana for that, but who would we want to hit? Like, if he has Chief Knack Attack, I guess we would want to hit him. If he has Curious Changelings, we'd want to hit it. Let's go for the mana here. Upcycled Rake should be fine. This is a pretty low value unit. It's going to die to everything anyways. I would prefer to get like a point of health, but we didn't have the option. Right, having this guy... Oh, he just takes it. Interesting. I was going to say, having this guy just die to... like a Pytos would feel kind of bad. Protects the chief. Sure. Well, we tried to get that unit off the board. Should have tried harder, maybe. Didn't have any ways to try harder. All right, the second entrancing lure turning up. Saying, I got you, fam. you can block at some point.
We hunt to survive.
So let's see. I mean, the thing I guess we would like to try and do now is get the Saur. What do you call it? Saurion on board. Give it Scout and give it Entrancing Lure. We need 9 mana to do that. So we have 6 for next turn. We just got to take a 3 bank out. Piltover and Castaway's the answer then. Definitely want him blockable. Nidalee's gonna zing us, but the rest of his board should be shut down. This is all Terrain Trooper. He'll get a free hit with Nidalee. I'd rather just take the damage than lose a unit, but see. Interesting. Who is this guy? Picked up shit buried in ice. That's a tough spot, right? He hasn't really presented one of these boards to where it feels like we need to bury in ice, but we probably do at this point. If he's gonna hit us with a with an all-terrain or with a big game hunter play next turn, I can never remember what that guy's called. Then we're gone. That's like our only out. So I think we have to keep 2 mana for the buried in ice. Kind of interested in trying to take down the Chief Neck Attack. He's probably not super important at this point, though. Curious Changelings is probably the scary unit here. So we don't get to draw a card this way. It's okay, though. We already have a million cards in our hand. Drawing the 1 isn't going to be the end of the world. Now, the thing I'm kind of curious in, I slammed in this attack because I was so excited just to get all of our units out here, but the thing we're going to be looking to do is playing Ornn 2 turns from now. And I'm like, we can just pick cards in hand, right? We can currently Ornn the Upcycled Rake because it's bigger than the Light of Acacia. I was like a little worried as to what happens if like the Combat Cook or the Castaway died, and then we didn't have access to Upcycled Rake for our Ornn 2 turns from now. That would have been a problem. So, but now we have to bury in ice. If this is a Avenging Vistaya and he gets the counterspell on it, fine. If this is a 6/5 Overwhelm, then we're dead. So
This one will be easy prey.
it's gonna be a Vistaya, isn't it? Okay. Oh, kind of is what it is. I don't feel like we had an option there. You can't just let him be like, okay, well, I've got 700 power of of Overwhelm on the board. What are you going to do about it? You just have to drop the spell and hope for the best. So now we are going to run into that spot that's a problem, in that we're going to have these spells coming back to hand, or these units coming back to hand. Can't get the equipment we want on our Ornn. Are we just dead? Looks like we're just dead. Okay. GG. Well, it's kind of what it is. I feel like we took every angle we could to stop his combos that game, and then he just had every answer along the way, right? We tried to take down the Knack Attack, he had the Quicksand. We tried to take down the Changelings, we had the Quicksand. We tried to play our Buried in Ice, and he had the Avenging Vistaya. Like, I feel like if at any point along the course of that game something just went right for us, then that would have been fine. And I think we took that game in the proper angle, right? We didn't want to just be trying to combat down with our units. They're not going to be good enough. And so I think that was fine. I'm happy with how that went. All right, so we'll keep our 2 unit boosters. See if we can't get out ahead of the old Balin.
Kindle, did you wander off again? Better get the forge going.
Alright, we'll probably lose one of these weaponsmith's apprentices along the way, but not the end of the world. Ooh, we will not. So what do we got here? A double bonus onto the upcycled rake. It's probably where we want to be. Is making deal with that nonsense. I know that you can just trade out immediately because the castaway's a small unit, but I think this is strong. Like the thing I kind of look towards playing against Formidables is you're just trying to wear down their stats, right? It's like as you get a block in front of a unit, you get to take down both its attack and its health. And so I'm usually fine to just throw a ton of units away in the face of all of these things. Let's see, Combat Cook comes in. Here's some equipment is fine. We're gonna re-equip up one of these Weaponsmith's apprentices. It's like we really want to get the rake back. We do have Fish Fight in hand. So let's keep just chunking down these stats. Right, he gets the win on the bird into the apprentice, but he's left with a pretty bad unit behind. So how do we go about this? We want to Sarion next turn, along with the if we well, I guess if we can kill off our unit is kind of the big questioning factor here, but we would like to be Sarioning with Scout next turn if possible.
Right, to work.
This is gonna be is this where the Volibear comes in? It says, watch this, I'm gonna ace your units. Oh, it's just Galio. Nobody cares about Galio. Let's see.
Rather be sailors, but this looks fun too.
Just keep slamming stats in, you know. Hey, Bust, what are you doing today? Slamming stats. Sending my dudes away to the nether. But wearing the stats down on the Formidables. What you thinking on here, boss? This was a nice pickup with the combat reel. It does let us make an attack this turn and then get the mana back to replay another equipment. Like, I think we want to save our mana here to try and fish fight. So we can fish fight this turn and then replay an equipment if we want.
I can take it.
Looks like it's not going to be necessary, but still feels good. And then we take away like 1,000,000 health from him, so his Galio is nowhere near as intimidating at this point. Cool. And a Buried in Ice making an appearance. I don't think we're going to be dropping that here, but kind of nice to see. And Jax. We're going to get Jax down. I don't think we need to lead in with him, though. I'm mainly interested in getting the rake going on the Sarion. So let's go ahead and drop that. He attacks with Galio, we'll just block with other stuff.
Get shipwrecked.
But keep wearing those stats down. Nothing wrong with that.
Fight or die.
Interesting. Take down the junior. The junior is not very good in this match. FYI, the junior is good against Samira. The junior is not good against Janna. It's not good against our deck. I've pulled the junior out of all of our decks, but he's the kind of safer takedown in this space. So now we can deploy Jax. We can switch the equipment onto our Sarion if we want. Like, how big is our Jax coming in? He's gonna be a 8/7. So we can do like this. It's gonna trample in for 6. Should be a lethal. You can of course play combat tricks and stuff, but I think this is just going to be a little bit safer at the end of the day, as opposed to like putting the quick attack onto the Sarion. But it was enough. Victory was unlocked. The crowd say, GG Bust, well done. You are the best in the world, according to ftpbust.com. It felt good. So, again, that was our third match. That's where we're going to call it for the day. We can pull this stuff up, talk about it a little bit more. And, you know, I'm getting, like, happier and happier with how these experiences are going. Like, I'm fine with Vayne Jarvan. It does, you know, suffer a little bit in the Warden of the Tribe's mirrors because Vayne is not the strongest early game play, but she gives so much longevity in a lot of other matchups and so many combos with the Darkened Spears and all that stuff that I'm usually a pretty big fan of her. Like, I'm quite happy with this deck and all of the way that the matchups are going. Otherwise, the Nidalee deck is the big wild card here. You could see how uncomfortable I felt playing with Nidalee. Like, I have some of the combos down in my head now that I've gotten a few more reps in. Like, I can kind of picture what you're supposed to do in terms of getting these big obnoxious draws together. But if, like, things start to go wrong, that's where I'm really kind of limited here. And I still don't even feel particularly comfortable with the mulligans or particularly comfortable with how the curves look. And so the like, one of the big decisions for me is going to be, do I really want to spend like the next 4 days grinding out Nidalee decks and figuring out, you know, how strong this is to have it be in a space to where I may not even play it in the open. Like, it's a very big investment for me to get proficient with Nidalee, and I just don't know if I have enough time to do it. It's an interesting thing with Runeterra. This is the only game to where I've kind of run across this concept that I call it muscle memory, as to where you know, maybe last season you got really proficient with Samira Seraphine, and then the season before that you got really proficient with Scouts, and the season before that you got really proficient with Thresh Nasus. And so it's like, as we roll into this best of 3 season, say something like Thresh Nasus. I know Thresh isn't in standard, but you know, with Thresh Nasus, even if you don't intend on playing it, you have a lot of reps with it in the past, and you understand what your opponent's trying to do and what their angles are going to be and the like. And if you know, while Thresh Nasus might be different from like 2 sets ago, when with the release of different cards and stuff, you can like pick it up and get quite familiar with it very quickly. As to where with a deck like Nidalee, there's not a lot of like space with this style of deck to where I can be like, oh, this kind of angle is like playing with pirates, or this kind of angle is like playing with this deck. Like, this is a singular kind of combo deck all on its own that doesn't even play similarly to stuff like Varus decks, and doesn't play similarly to stuff like Pantheon decks. And so with the way that like I kind of structure the channel and everything to where I'm playing different decks pretty much every day of the week, I don't get nearly as much opportunity to be like, okay, well, I'm just going to jam 70 games of Nidalee because nobody wants to watch me play Nidalee every single day of the week for an entire week. And so I like how the deck feels. I like where it's at, but I would say probably at the end of the day, this is one of these decks that I need to just like grind ladder with more. And then we can like more seriously think about it in a future season. I don't think that I'm actually going to bring this to the open. I'll make the next Battles with Bust video with this deck, but I don't think I'm going to bring this to the open. But I am saying that if you're proficient with this deck, this is going to be a good open to bring it to. Last but not least, with Jack's Ornn, you know, I was happy with how that last set of games went. I felt like those were going to go poorly, but, you know, in those matchups to where you're not favored, having these go poorly and still feel okay was kind of good. And so with that Nidalee match that we just played, I feel like we took all the right angles and then the opponent had all the right answers the whole way through. It's not a good match. I'm not trying to state that, but to have everything go wrong and still feel in it is always kind of a good thing. And then with that last match against the Volibear deck, you know, I think we handled that one pretty well. I like our strategies against Formidables of just throw stats at them and really grind them down, and they lose out on a lot of their abilities. And we really got to kind of showcase it there, even though that's another one that probably shouldn't be a great match. That would have been a much different game if he drew Balin, and so it's kind of tough. But nonetheless, I'm getting, you know, quite a bit more comfortable with the best of 3 series here, getting a better tie-in and grasp of the format, and I like where things are going. So that is going to do it for us today. I hope everyone enjoyed the video. I hope you maybe learned a thing or two along the way, and you had a good time watching. So this is Bust, and we thank you for being here.